aggressive tweets during the Trump administration on the subject of reducing the legislative filibuster, getting rid of it in effect, and reducing the legislative threshold to 51. That only protected the Democratic minority in the Senate for the whole 4 years. I thought it was appropriate for Senator Schumer to make the same statement publicly that I had when I was in a similar situation, and that was not forthcoming. Fortunately, there are other Democrats. Senator Manchin yesterday made it clear he was not going to support getting rid of the legislative filibuster under any circumstances for the duration of this Congress. I talked to Senator Sinema last night. She said the same thing. So the issue, as far as I'm concerned, is resolved. And of course, it would have produced nothing, because without the supermajority threshold, the Senate would have been sitting there at 50-50. The vice president doesn't count for a quorum. Anytime the minority wanted to deny the majority a quorum, all we'd have to do is have somebody not show up. In other words, it would not have produced the kind of streamlined Senate that those on the progressive left across the country had convinced themselves that it was, sort of the holy grail. If you can grab that, all of our problems are solved. They would not have been solved. It would have only exacerbated the way the Senate works. The way we need to go forward in a 50-50 Senate is to have things that appeal to 60 votes on the legislative calendar. So that is was the only impediment to moving ahead. Senator Schumer and I will be able to adopt an organizing resolution that's very close to exactly what was negotiated by Lott and Daschle after the 2000 election, when we also ended up with a 50-50 Senate.
Thanks, Leader. Well, and I would just echo what the leader said about the need to try and keep rules in place that give minority in the Senate a voice. That's why the Senate is the Senate. It's the way it was designed. And President Biden said in his inaugural speech last week that he wanted to promote healing and unity and collaboration and reach out and work with Republicans. And we take him at his word and look forward to where we can finding common ground. And obviously where we can't, we'll stand and fight, and we'll be the loyal opposition. But it was unfortunate that Senate Democrats, Leader Schumer, had a different point of view when it came to the filibuster, and I'm grateful, as the leader pointed out, to Senators Manchin and Sinema for their willingness to step forward and say that we will protect the legislative filibuster. I think having that on the record pretty much ensures that, at least for the foreseeable future, we'll be able to maintain the 60-vote threshold when it comes to most legislation and ensure that minority voices and votes are represented in the United States Senate. And on that point, I would say there are some things that they're talking about doing right now. The new administration there's a stimulus bill that they're proposing and discussion about how they might be able to accomplish that in the Senate. And I would hope that they would, again, reach out to Republicans and find common ground. Many of us have said for a long time that anything that we do related to the coronavirus needs to be targeted. It needs to be fiscally responsible. It needs to take into consideration the fact that every dollar that we spend is a borrowed dollar, and make sure that we're putting it out there where it's most needed. And the increase in checks that have been talked about from $600 to $1,400, there was some analysis that came out that suggested that you could, for the amount of money that it would take to do that, literally wipe out the income tax liability for 9 years for everybody in the 50% lowest income tax categories in this country. And that's a lot of money. And I think it makes sense for us as we go through this to take a really hard look at how we're spending every one of those dollars and ensuring that it is targeted, it is fiscally responsible, and it's responding to a real need that's out there. Republicans are ready to work with the new administration, ready to work with the Democrats here in the Senate, and we hope that they will follow through on the new president's commitment to work in a constructive, bipartisan way and consult with Republicans so that we can get some good outcomes for the American people.
President Biden gave his inaugural address, and he called for unity. So we have a 50-50 Senate. That is not a Senate that should pursue radical ideas. But yet Chuck Schumer, in his statements and speeches, is one that is refusing to go and do what should be done in terms of committing to focus on a Senate that can work together. He's not committed to protecting the filibuster, the 60-vote margin that allows and makes sure that the Senate works in a bipartisan way, that assures the minority to have a voice, that makes sure that all voices are heard as legislation is passed. Now, a couple of years ago, when the Republicans had the White House, the House, and the Senate, 33 Democrat senators signed on to a letter that said that we should preserve the filibuster, the 60-vote threshold. 27 of those Democrat senators are still in the Senate today. They talked about that would assure across-the-aisle cooperation. A former senator who signed that is now Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. But yet we have senators who run for office, for re-election and for election, on the platform of eliminating the filibuster, on a platform of radically changing America. That's the exact opposite of what President Biden has called for on Inauguration Day. And it is time for Senator Schumer to line up with the president and commit to sustaining the current rules of the Senate.
On pandemic and vaccines, I've had a chance to visit with the new director of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, who's in the middle of her first week. She took office on the 20th of January, took responsibility for that. We need to get our money out there more effectively. We provided $8.5 billion for the implementation of the vaccine program. We spent $3 billion of those dollars. So getting that money out there, setting goals that make sense, being sure that the vaccine is effectively available to people, something I intend to continue to work with the CDC on. I think they can do a better job and look forward to helping them do that.
This past weekend, I had the great opportunity and honor of welcoming home a number of Iowa National Guardsmen from a tour overseas. The 2nd Charlie Company of the 2nd of the 147th Regiment, great aviators, Army aviators, were back in the great state of Iowa, returned from the CENTCOM area of responsibility. And then we turned around and I was able to send off another great Iowa unit, the 734th Regional Support Group. And as I was at those ceremonies, it reminded me of the time that I spent wearing those same boots, deploying, whether it was overseas or in support of civil activities in the great state of Iowa. Our guardsmen have really stepped up to the plate. They are always ready. They are always there. And we witnessed that, whether it was through the derecho storm in Iowa this past year, whether it was inauguration activities right here in our nation's capital. They deserve our admiration. They deserve our respect. And most importantly, they deserve our gratitude. And as it comes to the filibuster, we absolutely must maintain the legislative filibuster. Certainly, you've heard all of the arguments why we need to maintain it, to help the minority retain their voices in the United States Senate. But certainly, because I think we can all agree, we do not need a second House of Representatives.
So as the new chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, clearly was disappointed that Rob Portman decided not to run for re-election. It's another race that we'll raise the money for and win. Rob's been a great senator, and I've enjoyed serving with him the first 2 years. We're off and running. We are talking to candidates. We're recruiting candidates. We're raising money. The Biden administration is making our job easier with their policies, not focusing on having a secure border. Bailing out Chuck Schumer's state and Kamala Harris's state when those states don't want to do the right things and live within their budgets. So I think we're going to have a great 22. I think we're going to have as good a 22. It's going to be similar to what happened around the country in 2010 when I got elected because people got fed up with Obama's policies.
Leader?
Yeah, let me just mention, we got to be sworn in at 2:30, but Manu?
Senator McConnell, do you believe that Donald Trump's actions were impeachable in your view? And when was the last time you spoke with the former president?
Well, I can answer the second one. The last time I spoke with him was the day after I declared that Biden had obviously won the election after the Electoral College on December the 14th. It would have been December the 15th. With regard to impeachment issues, we're going to be addressing that in great depth here, beginning shortly. We're going to be sworn in. There are going to be 2 votes, one on the proposal by Senator Paul, the second one on the pretrial agreement that Senator Schumer and I have reached that's been signed off on by the president's lawyers, and they believe they are set up here to have a fair process, and I think that's important. And then we'll all be there starting February the 9th, I believe it is, to begin to listen to the arguments.
Leader McConnell.
I've got to run because we've got to get sworn in here.
Just one more question. Leader McConnell.
They have 30 minutes.